Rowan here. The audio you're about to hear was actually recorded for a podcast. We were on the Big Dumb Monsters podcast, and we spent about 2 hours with our friends just talking about The Thing. And I loved so much of what we said that I cut up a bunch of chunks of all that audio, and this is a small portion of that for this video here. And enjoy.
Is it one of those movies that once it hit cable, everyone's just like, oh, this is amazing? In preparation for this episode, we actually did watch the 1950s version.
All of them. We watched everything.
Yeah.
We've also heard the radio play.
We've heard the radio play before. That's based on the short story. But we hadn't watched the 1950s. So we watched that. We watched the prequel that came out in 2011.
Yeah.
We also, because we're big fans of the practical effects, we watched the movie Harbinger Down, which is where all the practical effects from the prequel went eventually. So it's kind of Thing associated.
But I will say, I hesitate to call the 1982 a true remake of the 50s one. It's more like just a better adaptation of the story to begin with. Because the one in the 1950s, the Thing doesn't turn into anybody else. The Thing is just a vegetable.
It's very 1950s. It's a cookie-cutter 1950s monster movie.
Someone literally says, like a carrot. That's the Thing of the 1950s. It's made reference, like they reference the 1950s one in the 1982 when they show the people all standing around in a circle in the ice in the video they're watching. They're talking about that movie, but like their thing was not a thing. Whereas in 1982 it's like actually the story. It's actually who goes there. It's a much better everything. There's a thing where it can't replicate metal.
In the prequel, they do this because they couldn't redo the blood test thing.
Yeah.
So in the prequel, the way they figure out if you're the Thing is that your fillings aren't there. So there's a line in that one that's actually pretty good where someone's just like, so you're going to kill me because I floss?
No, it's not great.
I did not like it in theaters,
it's not
but
great.
we rewatched it, and also there was a documentary specifically about special effects, which focused on the Thing prequel. And that made me be a lot more forgiving to it. I think the paranoia, like, on rewatches, you especially, like, can build that puzzle for yourself. Try and just figure out, like, who now is infected. It just, on the first watch, it just comes out very bleak, because everyone's just kind of, like, sad and alone.
And we knew that he was on edge to begin with, because he starts out ruining a computer because he couldn't beat it at chess. That's the first thing he does.
I thought that was the perfect setup to his character, because
Yeah.
it's just like, here's a man who just, like, will not accept losing.
So we know going in, oh, he's this guy. He will destroy equipment because no, screw you. Oh, there's one time where he's going outside and he puts his hat on, and I remember thinking, like, what is that supposed to do right now? What is that supposed to do in Antarctica, exactly?
So yeah, they find an alien and things just go downhill from there. Well, they don't even really find it. Like, they bring in the dog, and the dog's there for like 2 days before they figure out that something's weird with it. They mentioned that they were only there for 8 weeks, and they're just like, but that's not long enough to go crazy. I do think this is one of the things, like, on rewatch, you're like, well, that's obviously the Thing. But if, they didn't see the chase scene that we saw, so all they know is a helicopter lands, a guy gets off with a gun, shouts at them in Norwegian, and then shoots one of theirs in the leg. And that's all they know.
Yeah.
There's a dog there too, but it's just like, they don't know the language, so they don't know he's shooting at the dog.
We also own huskies, though, so I wonder if that changes how we view the dog. Even with, like, the tendrils coming out, I'm still like, aw, puppy.
Oh, during the kennel scene, like, after, because last time we watched this was before we had huskies. So
That's
we watched
true.
this now, having huskies in our house. And as soon as it puts in the kennel, I'm like, oh no.
Oh, no.
I don't want to watch this scene.
Oh no, the puppies.
Oh, yeah.
And there's that one dog that turns around and starts gnawing away chunks of the fence to try to get out. The actor dog, in that moment, has a tail wagging, is, like, clearly having a grand time until getting sprayed, and then it's just like, I hate this. I would like my treat now, please, thank you.
I think the great dog actors in this movie. The dog's A+ acting.
We're gonna talk about Jed, the actor dog, because this one dog actor did actually go on to do other things.
So I can nitpick this movie. There are There are things it has about it that, like, it's as a piece of cinema, you can say, oh, this is, like, it does suffer from a little bit of Carpenteritis, where the third act is, like, so much a jolt away from everything else, and everything happens so violently so quickly. But if you put on The Thing, I'll never be disappointed. And then it just drops back down to, like, them having normal conversations about, like, are we eating beans tonight?
Yeah. Well, also the subtle moments. Like, there's one moment where Monster, presumably corpse, is covered, and Windows is looking at him and saying, you know, we should really just burn this. And he walks away, and as soon as he walks away, we see the sheet move.
Yeah, like, does one breath in the forefront of the scene, and it was just, like, rewatching it, I'm just like, that's amazing.
It's subtle, and it's creepy, and Windows knows something happened, but there's no proof. No,
And then
I loved it.
that's the rest of the movie, is as soon as they figure out this thing can imitate people, it's just amping up the suspense, and then revealing that there's a thing there, and then everyone drops back down to, are we good now? And then the suspense ramps back up
Right.
as they find signs that the thing's still there. Every single computer is just like, oh yeah, they used to look like that. It had 5 circuits and it took up a room and all it did was play chess poorly.
But there was one simulation moment on a computer.
Yeah,
where it's
the-
showing what
the-
the cells do. And we were looking at that like, are we looking at this? No, this is just what he's decided. This is a simulation this is War Games with cells.
Yeah, Wilford Brimley sat there and programmed a simulation based on him looking at cells in a microscope.
And he
It's
wasn't
just
going to show anybody else.
That's a suspension of disbelief moment that, like...
Then he didn't show anyone else. He only showed himself. And then he got a gun out.
And then he got mad that no one knew what he was talking about.
Yeah. When poor Child's just like, hey, could you maybe chill out for 2 seconds?
One of
Holy crap.
my favorite, like, scenes of the movie is Wilford Brimley's out in the shed, and they go out to talk to him. He's got the noose hanging next to him, like, I'm fine now. Can I come back inside?
Yeah.
And the noose is just hanging there in the forefront.
I wasn't okay. I got better. I'm fine now. Let me back inside.
You're not listening. I want to come back inside. I won't hurt anybody.
That's one of the first things he says when he's in there. He says, I keep hearing things outside.
I hear strange things.
Yeah. And then he tells them to go after somebody else.
Ain't Fuchs.
So he might have been infected then, and then it might have just taken
We
him
did
over
have this
later.
conversation with a friend of ours who is actually a research scientist with, like, diseases, and because no one in this movie has, like, safety goggles on or, like, a respirator mask. They all have
even a
gloves that come up
shield.
to, like, the shallow part of the wrist. He's elbow deep in this still alive thing corpse with gloves that only come up to his wrist. They're all, during the blood test, they're all cutting their finger with the same scalpel, even though they know this thing is highly infectious down to a single cell.
What gets me is when McCready is holding the petri dish filled with blood, with the fucking trying to, like, make it catch on fire or get hot with the little stick.
Yeah.
And he's holding it so close to his face, knowing what it'll do. It's like, what are you doing? He's right.
I think that was a great thing, though, because as they're going
thing.
through the blood samples, he's picking up and holding them closer and closer to his face.
Yeah.
So just, like, subtly in your brain, you're just like, no, don't do that.
Yeah. And when it finally does its thing and pops out, the reaction looks genuine. It looks like he knew the puppet was coming at some point, and oh my god, there it is. So I don't think this was meant to be a specific character from the 1982 thing. Just, what if a thing, but doesn't quite know what it's doing yet. And again, there might be more of these. Maybe not. I haven't decided yet. Let me know in the comments if you want to hear more of this. And otherwise, you can listen to the whole 2 hours. There's a link in the description. And for now, rock on.